going to do 3 recipes today, and the ones I wanted to start with are recipes, or actually the ones that I was asked to do today are recipes that everybody can eat and everybody kind of knows about and everybody likes, but that fit well into the diabetes lifestyle. And then throughout the session, we're going to talk about other types of things that might be less known and less important, but can be really, really helpful to people with diabetes and everybody else. And we were talking a little bit earlier about the term, diabetic or with diabetes. And when I was publishing my 3rd book, it became evident it's no longer politically correct to use the term diabetic. And we were going strictly with people with diabetes. So let's go ahead and get started with making the pizza. So this is a really fun homemade pizza that anybody can do. It's very, very easy. Kids love it, and it's great to get everybody excited and in the kitchen together. And it kind of takes a different role when you make pizza this way. When you order pizza, it becomes that late night thing, I don't know what else to do, or there's nothing in the cupboard, or I'm moving, so I'm ordering pizza. But when you do it this way, it kind of becomes a ritual and a tradition. So especially for people who are dealing with issues of might not being able to relate to their family anymore, or relate to having those food bonds, making pizza is the perfect thing because everybody loves pizza. And we were also talking a little bit about how when you have these types of recipes, nobody wants to know that they're healthy and nobody wants to know that they're diabetes friendly. They should just kind of be that way. And it's ironic because when I market my cooking classes or my demos that I do internationally, it's always that way. If I just offer the foods, I get sellouts. But when I offer them as a diabetes-friendly menu, hardly anybody comes. So it's one of those realities. But let's get started with our pizza dough. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm using for this recipe a whole wheat crust, as I'm just using straight whole wheat flour. You could do a mixture of quinoa flour and chickpea flour and whole wheat if you wanted, or you could just go with the alternatives if you didn't want to use whole wheat at all. And there's actually, in the Diabetes Forecast magazine, there's the alternative flour version if you wanted to do that. It's in this month's issue. But I'm doing it this way because that's what I always do and I think it's really good. So I've got 1.5 cups of the whole wheat flour here, already measured out. And then I'm going to start my yeast mixture. This is just a packet of yeast, active dry yeast. If you didn't want to use a packet, you wanted to go with the more economical version of a jar like I do because I do a lot of home baking, then you would want to use about 2.5 teaspoons. I'm going to put that right into my bowl. There's expiration dates on yeast, so always check those because if the yeast expires, your bread or your pizza won't rise. Even though I'm making pizza today, this is the same technique that you would use to make any simple bread. So if you don't know how to make bread or you want to learn how to make bread, this is the perfect recipe for that. I've got 1/4 cup of a little bit hotter than lukewarm water here. You have to be careful whenever you're doing yeast, because if you add water that's too hot, it's going to kill your yeast, and then the yeast won't work and do its job. So I'm just stirring this up. It's always a good idea to have yeast on hand. Whenever I make bread or pizza, I always make really large quantities because you can freeze it and it does better. Now to my flour, I'm going to add about 1 tablespoon of a good quality extra virgin olive oil. The olive oil is really good in healthy fats. It helps us to digest the nutrients better and it helps us to absorb them a little bit better. I'm also going to add some unrefined sea salt. We're finding, as Lee mentioned, sodium is really, really important. People should be watching their sodium. And if you use an unrefined sea salt, it's also good because it helps to prevent the bloating that people can get by ingesting sodium. It also has a little bit less sodium than a table salt, and it has minerals in it that are particularly good for people that have diabetes. So look for the unrefined sea salt. And this sounds like a gourmet thing. It's very inexpensive. It's easy to find. You can get it at a lot of the supermarkets. I was listening to a commercial on television, and it was for unrefined gas and these natural types of things that you can put in your car and how great they are for fuel in your car. And I'm like, we need a commercial like that for salt for people. So what goes into our body is really important. So I'm going to add about 1/2 teaspoon here. And I'll just mix this up. Now to this, I'm going to add my yeast mixture. And I'm looking to see how you can, there we go. So you can see in my yeast mixture here, it's starting to get a little bit of foam on top. The foam just lets you know that it's working, it's active. If you don't get any foam, that means your yeast is dead. You've got to start over again. So I'm adding this in. And then I'm going to add about another cup of water. 1/2 cup of water, I'm sorry. So we've got about 3/4 cup total of water to a cup 1/2 of flour. And always remember that ratio, because you can double this, you can triple this, you can do it any way that you like. So this is kind of our loose dough and what we're working with right now. And I'm going to go ahead and put some flour down on my work surface. Now, kneading dough is really, really fun. You get the kids involved. It's a little bit of a workout for your upper arms, and you can take out your stresses of the day. It's a little bit therapeutic. But a lot of people don't like to knead dough. They don't want to get their hands dirty, or they don't have time, or they just like to use the fancy equipment that they have in their kitchen. So if you want to do that, you can do this in the food processor. You can put a dough hook on your sanding mixer and do it. It's 1 minute. That's all it takes. And you can do big quantities in the equipment too, which I definitely recommend. Always make at least 2, because you can freeze 1 for next week when you want to order pizza and you don't have to. Or, you could do even more than that. So I'm just going to flour my work surface. And then I'm going to add the dough right into the middle. Now, depending on where you are, the dough needs different amounts of moisture. So in very humid areas, like Houston's very, very humid, I found that my recipe needed a little bit more, and the recipe's in the book, but I needed a little bit more flour when I was pre-making one downstairs so you could see the finished product. And that's just because this is humid. So in dry areas, you might need a little bit less liquid, and that's something just always to keep in mind. So I'm just working this together. It's a nice, soft dough. Again, 1 minute in the food processor or a minute in the oven if you need it. And then this is very, very light. You can feel the lightness of it. So I'm going to keep incorporating a little bit more flour. When this sticks on your hands like this is a sign that you want to incorporate a little bit more flour. You want to get it until it's slightly sticky to the touch. The trick to really good bread is to letting it have a little bit of stickiness to it. And when people make bread by hand, they usually don't like the stickiness. So they work until it's very, very dry. And that takes out some of your character. So you want to just make sure that you don't do that. You can do this right on your kitchen counter if it's clean. You can do marble. It really doesn't matter what you're kneading in, just as long as you're incorporating all of the dough. And I'm just punching this down and over. The correct way is to turn it quarter turns each time. But I like to kind of just be a little bit more free-form with it. So I'm going to use a little bit more flour. Does anybody make pizza at home? Great. The trick to really good pizza is having a hot oven. In addition to simple ingredients, you need a really hot oven. In Italy, they have 900-degree ovens, which, our ovens usually go up to like 450, 500, 550 max. And they actually lobbied the European Union to make sure that they could keep that oven temperature with the safety standards, because the European Union did not want them to. But they're like, Italy was, threatening to withdraw if they wouldn't let them have the 900-degree ovens. So they make really, really good pizza. So just keep that in mind. If you're at home, crank your oven to 500, you're still going to have good pizza. But definitely you don't want like a 350, because it's not enough. So just work this in. I have a nice ball. So imagine if I had a double amount of this, then I would divide it into this quantity. And you want to work until it's smooth, and you can kind of feel the resistance. So this is good. Now I'll just wash my hands. And in a lot of recipes, they say 5 to 10 minutes for the dough, but it really depends on what your strength is, how vigorously you're kneading. So you'll want to go and do it until you can feel that it's really a nice, tender kind of a dough. I apologize that we don't have a sink out here on the stage. And I could have used gloves, but then I wouldn't have been able to touch the dough, which I really enjoy. So I think we have some water back here. So now we can put this to rest. And it usually takes about an hour at room temperature to rest the dough, but if you want to do it a different way, You can put it in a 100-degree setting, the proof setting, on your home oven, and that will work. Or you can just leave it in a warmer area. Or you can cover it with lots and lots of things, and that will make the dough rise faster. So we've got the dough right in here. Now I'm just turning it to cover with the olive oil. And then we're going to let it rise with a kitchen towel right on top. And I've got what we call in TV a beauty, all ready to go. This is one that's already risen. You can see the little holes on top. All those little holes mean that it has done its job and the yeast has been working. What you want to do to make sure that it's ready to roll out is you just put your finger in like this. If the hole stays, if that hole stays there right in the middle, that means that you've done your job, it's risen properly, and you can go ahead and work it. If the hole kind of closes up on itself, you've waited too long and it's gone bad. Now say you're going to work or you're going out in the day, you're going to do whatever you're going to do, and you want to have the dough ready for dinner. You could put this in the refrigerator. Cover it with plastic wrap really tightly. Cover it again with some aluminum foil or something that's going to keep the plastic wrap, maybe a rubber band around it. Just make sure it's very well covered. Put it in the fridge. It'll take about 12 hours to rise. And then you can come home at night and roll it out and make your pizza. So it's very easy. I'm going to let this sit right there, and we're going to make our sauce. Does anybody make homemade sauce at home? Sauce is a good one for people with diabetes. It's a really something that you should have in your repertoire because those packaged sauces have so much sodium and so much sugar. It's amazing, like the amount of sugar. And there's no need for it. You know, tomatoes don't have that much sugar in them alone. So you can use fresh tomatoes, you can use canned tomatoes, you can use this brand, and I don't get endorsed by this brand at all, but I really, really believe in it. The reason why it's hard to get good fresh tomatoes that are always consistently good year-round. If you use canned tomatoes, they have a lot of sodium in them, so then that becomes a problem. This brand doesn't have any citric acid or added sodium or any kind of chemicals or anything like that to it. And you can get it, you can order it online, you can get it at gourmet shops, Whole Food shops, pretty much everywhere. It comes from Italy. It's called Pomi. It's made by the same people that make the milk in these little things, the Parmalat. So they also have that type of product. But the tomatoes are really good, and they're always going to give you kind of a consistent result, which is what we want. So I'm going to add my olive oil. The good quality olive oil is definitely worth its money. It's not just a marketing gimmick to get you to buy good olive oil. Olive oil, when it's extra virgin, it should contain antioxidants in it. So you always want to make sure that you're letting the olive oil get hot. And as I was mentioning before, good quality olive oil, fresh olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, it should burn when it goes down your tongue. That burn that it makes, that's the antioxidants doing their job. And so that means that it's a really good quality olive oil. So taste your olive oils. A lot of stores will let you taste them. Look for that burn, that really rich, fruity flavor for the health benefits, if for nothing else. If you ever have the chance to attend a fancy food show, we had the fancy food show in Washington, D.C. last week. It's a lot of fun. You can go around and sample everything and be educated about food and different ingredients. I'm going to add my garlic in. This is 2 cloves of just freshly chopped garlic. Important for the freshly chopped because as it's chopped, it releases a lot of the antibacterial properties. So you want to make sure and use it nice and fresh and just chop it up. People don't like to chop garlic. They can use a little press. It's no problem. It's taking just a second for my hot plate to heat up, so I'm going to leave that on for a second. I'm going to add a little bit of my unrefined salt. Maybe that will speed it up. But you can use a lot of different sauces for the pizza. It doesn't even have to be a tomato sauce. It could be a homemade pesto sauce. It could be something that you're doing with a lot of vegetables or pureed vegetables. Also, pureed beans are great on pizza. And it's really important for people to think about fiber and think about adding beans to everyone's diet. We're supposed to have a serving every day, but especially people with diabetes, the added fiber will help. It's a good quality protein, and it helps to burn fat. So we want to look at that. Cannellini beans, lentils, chickpeas, really, really good sources. So we can take them, puree them, in a food processor or a blender, and they're absolutely delicious. And just spread that on top of the pizza if you don't want to have a tomato sauce. So now our garlic's finally starting to cook a little bit, and I'll switch that around. You just want to cook the garlic until you start to get the aroma. You don't have to let it get black or brown or anything like that. Then I'm going to I'll add my tomatoes first. I'm going to add a little bit of pinch of crushed red pepper. You're going to see how finely crushed this is. This is really, really nice. They do this a lot in the Middle East and in Indian stores where they crush the pepper really, really fine. It's nice because it makes it go through the recipe and get absorbed, and you don't get any of those flakes, but you just get a nice flavor to it. And pepper and spice is nice because it helps us to eat less when we eat foods that have a little bit of spice. But if you don't want it, you could definitely leave it out. Then I'm going to add a little bit of my pepper and a little bit of salt. You don't need a lot for this recipe. And then I'm going to add some basil. And I'm just chopping this right in my hand. You can add cilantro if you wanted. You could add parsley. It doesn't have to be basil. But this will give you a good flavor. And whenever you make this, always make a double, triple quantity, because you can do so many things with this tomato sauce. You can add some chicken stock to it. Cup of this, 2 cups of chicken stock, some cannellini beans, and some orzo pasta, and you've got a great white bean pasta and tomato soup. Or you can just use this later when you're not making pizza on a whole wheat pasta with some grilled zucchini, grilled eggplant, grilled vegetables added in. It's a nice, easy meal. I'm all about getting people to make meals that they can kind of use from their freezer or their cupboard or their refrigerator without having to go to the store or to order out or to do extra things. So this is one of those time savers. So I'm just going to cover this. It takes about 10 minutes. People think they have to simmer this for a really long time. It's just the meat sauces that you have to simmer for a long time. But when you're using a nice quality tomato like this, 10 minutes is great. The less you cook it, the less acidic it is. So it becomes even better for you. So now while that's cooking, I'm going to go ahead and roll out my pizza dough. So we'll come back to our original area over here. Just want to make sure and flour your work surface. There's a recipe in this book for DIY bread, and it's basically the same process that we use to make the dough, except it's 2 cups of the whole wheat flour with a cup of oatmeal flour. I like to mix the oat flour with the wheat flour because the wheat tends to be tougher, and the oatmeal is a very tender type of flour. So when you mix them together, it gives you a nice mouthfeel that's not too much different than a processed flour, but you get the added health benefits. And the oat helps to manage the glucose levels. And healthy bread is a great thing to have on hand, have it in the freezer, because bread can be a really problematic issue. Bread is one of those things that, if you go to the store and buy it, even if it's a so-called healthier bread, you're going to find corn syrup in there. You're going to find a lot of different additives that we don't really need. And you can see how few ingredients are in this. So healthy bread is definitely a good thing to do. I have a rolling pin. This is another thing that the kids love. When we were kneading, I know a lot of adults don't like to knead, but if there are kids involved, the kids love to knead. And you can't over-knead bread. You can over-mix certain things like cakes, but with bread, the more you knead it, the better, because the kneading helps the gluten to develop. So you want to make sure and let the kids work with that. So I'm just making a little circle here. I'm going to sprinkle some more flour on it. And then you want to kind of flour your pin a little bit too. And you just roll. And this is a very light roll because this is a very pliable dough. And when I say pliable dough, I mean you can go like this and hand stretch it, and in a couple minutes you're going to have it. You don't really need to. I just, out of habit, I do this, but you really don't need to. And you can make it into a rectangle. You can make it into a circle. But this is a good, I would say, 10 to 12 inch pizza. And you roll it out to be very, very thin. So I know Brad was talking a lot about pizza and how much his family really, really likes pizza. And I think that everyone's families will enjoy this because it's a treat. It tastes great. There are a lot of times when we make substitutions in food, we make them healthier, that they don't taste as good as the real thing, and you kind of always still want the real thing. This is one like, I'd rather have this, and it's good for me. So I hope that everyone enjoys that. So you can see kind of how much I'm rolling this out. And I can go even further if I wanted. So it makes a pretty big pizza. Looks like it's done. Once you get these hot plates going, they stay really nice and hot. So you can tell when your sauce is done when it starts to separate from the sides. I'm going to use this guy as our fake pizza pan. Food service uses really, really big pans, but at home, I would put this on a nice tile and kind of get that preheated in the oven and then put this on it. That's going to give you a really nice crust. And then we can go ahead and top it with some of our tomato sauce. And again, you want to make this in a nice batch so that you can freeze it, because it'll freeze for up to a month. You just let it get cool. You put it in a plastic container, seal it really tight. You could even put it in Ziploc bags that are doubled. And then whenever you need it, you've got it on hand. You would let it come to room temperature after you're using it again, and then you just reheat it in a non-plastic container. Someone mentioned that yesterday. It was a really good point. It's not very healthy to heat in plastic, so you always want to avoid that. This becomes a great base for a lot of things. And a little bit goes a long way, so you're probably going to use less than you think you need. And then I'm going to take, I have fresh mozzarella. So you want to make sure to use that, or a nice low-fat mozzarella if you can't get this one. When I'm at home, I actually top this with arugula. I stir in about this much arugula into my sauce, and I put this right on top. Today we wanted to do a really kind of recipe that everybody would have all the ingredients on hand, so we didn't do this version. You could also do spinach, but it helps. Arugula's got so much iron in it and so many vitamins and minerals. It's only got about 35 calories per cup, so it's definitely something, a lot of fiber. You want to add in the whatever green you can at this point. It will make a more nutritious and even more delicious pizza. So I'm just tearing this myself by hand. This spreads out as it cooks. If you can get the mozzarella di bufala or the buffalo milk mozzarella, I'd recommend it because it's got a stronger taste And usually when things have a stronger taste, it's a richer flavor, and you get full faster. You need less of it. The less flavor things have, usually you need more of it to feel full, which is why like a zero fat, all fat-free everything, people don't usually stay so satisfied on those kind of diets. They tend to deviate. So a little bit of a good fat is better than none at all. If anyone from the audience would like to come up and play around with the crust and kind of feel the dough, you're more than welcome. It's a fun process. I think my friend in the pink phone from yesterday would like to come up and help fold the dough. And now I'm just going to top with a little bit of Romano. Romano is a sheep's milk cheese. Parmesan is a cow's milk cheese. Sheep's milk cheese is digested very well, has a little bit of a stronger flavor, so I'm just going to use that to top the pizza, and very little bit. A little bit goes a long way. It's also got a saltier flavor, so you're getting a little bit more kind of bang for your buck without adding more salt. Hello. Now I have a pizza here that I made this morning when I first came in. I did it down in the kitchen in one of these nice pans. And you can see what it looks like. This is baked in the oven, 500 for 10 minutes. We don't have an oven out here today, but that's how we did it. So this one, I'm just going to fold around this way. If you did it in a round pan, you can crimp right according to the pan instructions. And then I'm going to hit it with a little bit of olive oil on top. And you can brush the olive oil, but I usually end up not brushing, because what happens when you do that is the brush will oftentimes have a lot of bristles in it, and they get in the outside. So when you're doing a ton of pizza at a time, it's really easy to just go and do it through this way. So this is what your pizza would look like when it goes into the oven. You can see not a lot of time, and we did all those 3 steps from scratch. But if you would have had a double batch of dough ready to go, you just rolled out your dough. If you would have had extra sauce ready to go, same thing, and it wouldn't have taken hardly any time at all. So now I'll get started on our chicken herb burgers, but while I'm cleaning this up, does anybody have any questions about the pizza? No? Okay. So the chicken herb burgers are really, really easy. I have a lot of recipe videos that I do, and this is something that I get requests for a lot, are chicken burgers and turkey burgers, and they can just become the family burger. They don't really have to be a chicken burger because they taste great. When you build a pantry, or you kind of do your grocery shopping, people who are wanting to eat healthier, we talked about restaurants and how they sneak in a lot of butter and they sneak in a lot of fat and cream and things like that. And it's not really that they're sneaking in. They're doing it because that's the way restaurant recipes traditionally have been, because fat and sugar have a lot of flavor in them and they're really inexpensive. So it's the best way for them to get customers to come back because they like the flavor of the food and increase their profit margin and easily order things. So it's just part of the kind of way of dealing with the restaurant business. But when you're at home, you can make those important choices for yourself because you're using food that you don't pay any overhead on. So you're getting all of those benefits that you eat. So if you're going to start with something that's a little bit more lean or a little bit more healthful or doesn't have many flavor additives to it, you want to think about aromatics and how those can enhance the flavor of your food. Because they don't only enhance the flavor of the food, they also enhance the health benefits. So the things that we look at when we're looking at aromatics are garlic, onions, ton of flavor, antioxidant, of course we know the garlic and the antibacterial properties. We also know that onions, for example, help to clear waste materials from our cells. Onions, very good thing to eat. And also herbs. Each herb has its own list of virtues. And today I'm going to be using 3 different herbs in our chicken herb burgers. They are parsley, tarragon, and cilantro. Now, cilantro, as I mentioned before, has been proven to help regulate the glucose levels, so everybody should be using this a lot. I know some people don't like cilantro. Okay, you can use dried coriander. Coriander and cilantro are the same thing. Coriander is the dried version. A lot of other languages just have one word, but we use 2 different words. So cilantro is the fresh coriander. Tarragon, which is a nice anise-like flavor. It marries really well with chicken and poultry. If you don't like it, you don't have to use it. You could use dill. And parsley, which also has a lot of vitamin C and a lot of detoxifying properties. You can make a juice in the morning, just a little bit of parsley, a little bit of cilantro, and drink that before you eat. It really helps your body to start going and to start working on getting rid of some of those toxins. So I'll pass these around so everybody can just look at them. Chicken burgers, I'll put on some gloves. And I'm using a pretty significant quantity of these herbs, about 1/4 cup each. People can grow their own herbs. You can grow herbs on windowsills and flower boxes. It's really easy nowadays also to get good herbs. So this should be something that everybody can kind of have easily in their diet. So here's about 1 pound of chicken breast that's ground. You can also use the turkey if you like in this recipe. And I'm just going to add the parsley to it, and the tarragon, and the cilantro. And then I'm going to add a little bit of Dijon mustard. Mustard is a great thing for people to eat that are watching weight, watching calories, wanting to eat more healthy, because there's a lot of flavor to it, but doesn't have a lot of fat or calories. So it's a great flavoring, kind of all-purpose. You could add it to your vinaigrettes, as we mentioned, trying to make creamy, not very caloric vinaigrettes. Or you can add it to things like this. Nobody really tastes the mustard, but it's a little bit binding. And then it has the great flavor. So add a little bit of salt. And I'll get my pan preheated here. And then you just want to kind of squish everything together and make your patties. It's really uncomfortable with these gloves. You want to make sure that all of your herbs just get incorporated right into the meat. There are a lot of other things that you could do to kind of tenderize and stretch meat. A Mediterranean thing that they do a lot is they'll take an old stale piece of bread, soak it in milk, and then wring it out and then add that to meat. And that's because traditionally meat was expensive, so they're always looking at ways to expand it. And for health reasons, it's kind of better too, because if you're getting rid of fat, you can add other ingredients that way. You could also add pureed beans, pureed lentils, really anything you want into this recipe. So I'm just going to section off in half and then section off again, and that will make our 4 burgers. Meat, believe it or not, a serving is about 4 ounces. So people aren't used to that. People are used to what we get in stores, which is like, 8 ounces, 16 ounces, and the bigger the better. So it's important when you serve these to have like something filling with them, the beans, the legumes, a nice, really salad that's going to fill you up with a lot of fiber. And we also have a recipe in the book for sweet potato fries, which are really delicious and easy to make. People just make them in the oven with sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are also one of those ingredients that have been found to even out glucose levels. So they're popular now, they're in style, kids like them because they're orange, and they're also really good for us. And I kind of up the nutritional ante on those sweet potato fries by putting what I call a savory anti-inflammatory spice mix on them. And that's something that we made yesterday that I'm going to show you guys again how I made today, so that people can just have that on hand at home. So I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil to my pan. I'm just pan frying these because we don't have an oven out here. But if you're at home, you wanted to bake them, roast them 425, these will be cooked through in about 15 minutes. Really easy to do. You can make the patties, freeze them. You can also make them into what we call kofta kebabs, that are the little egg-shaped kebabs. Put them on skewers, put them on the grill. They taste really, really good. So while I'm waiting for this oil to heat up, I'm going to talk about the anti-inflammatory spice mix. And this is in your recipe books on page 17. But what I do with that is I take some popular spices that are already used in the world, which is turmeric. Turmeric's really heavily used in India and the Middle East and also Latin America. It's anti-inseptic, anti-inflammatory. People actually put it on their faces to ward off insects and sunburn and things like that. It's used as a dye because it gives everything this beautiful orangey color, but it really has a lot of anti-inflammatory properties. So I take about a half a cup of this and I put it into a jar. And I mix that with a 1/4 cup of dried ginger, which is also known for its anti-inflammatory and soothing properties. And then I add in a 1/4 cup of pure cinnamon. It has to be pure cinnamon because non-pure cinnamon has cassia mixed in with it, and it's a completely different nutritional profile. So get those 3 ingredients, mix them up, put them in a jar. You can sprinkle that on your cut up sweet potato with a little bit of olive oil, throw them in the oven at 425. Those are your sweet potato fries to make with this burger or whenever anybody wants them. So this is nice and hot. When you put them in, if you're doing them in the pan, when the minute it goes down, just squash them a little bit to make them less plump so they cook through more quickly. You're looking at about 165 degrees on poultry to be cooked through. These are great on the grill too. And these also make really good meatballs. You can put them in soup. I make little teeny tiny ones. I call it Grandma's meatballs. Nobody knows that Grandma used to use beef. You know, they taste really, really good. I'll just let these cook for a minute. And while we're doing that, we can come and talk about our smoothie. This is something that I developed. It's called a strawberry beauty smoothie, and that's because strawberries have a lot of great antioxidant properties in them that are good for our skin. You can do it with whatever berries you like. It's good because a lot of kids have diabetes. Kids are interested in smoothies, but a lot of places they're really loaded with sugar. I would look at this smoothie not as a drink, but as a good snack or as a kind of a breakfast replacement with a little 5 or 6 almonds, something that people can eat in that capacity. It's a little bit too caloric for a drink, but it's definitely very healthy compared to a lot of other things that are out there. So I'm going to start with a cup of yogurt. This is French vanilla low-fat yogurt. The yogurt's really, really good because yogurt contains inulin, and inulin is one of those things that helps balance out the glucose. So it's easy, it's convenient, it's available everywhere, and it's good for people. It's also really good for the skin. People make face masks out of it. Then I have about a cup of strawberries. You can use frozen if you want. And that reminds me, there's this topic of frozen strawberries, frozen vegetables, or fresh. And you know, we're interesting. As an American culture, we get so into things that when we do them, we want to make sure that we do it all the way. And like when we go on a diet, then all of a sudden we start saying, well, I can't eat anything frozen. It's got to be all fresh. And that's part of the reason why we fail sometimes, because we set ourselves up to have these lifestyle things that are impractical. But if you've got a good pantry, that's a good start. But you should have a well-stocked freezer too, and have the intention that it's absolutely fine that on a busy work night, you use some frozen foods, or a busy work morning, instead of having to get something from a fast food restaurant or order out or eat poorly. You should have a nice little arsenal, and everyone should have a nice little arsenal in the freezer of go-to foods. And I think frozen berries are a great one. And then we add our banana. Now, I had to go to great lengths to get a banana today, but yesterday in the kitchen downstairs, they had a big bin of all of these bananas that were well past their prime, and the executive chef told me down there that he gives them to the baker, and the baker is able to use them, and you know, it's like this reciprocal thing. I said, well, just save me 2 because I need them for the demo. So they couldn't save me 2 because the baker needed them, but I got 1, and you see how it has this brown, it's like banana bread ready. The banana bread ready of bananas are the ones that we want for our smoothies, because that means they're sweet. And the sweeter there are, that means we don't have to use honey or sugar substitutes or anything like that. We can just go straight fruit with this smoothie. So that's what I'm doing. So 1 really ripe banana. And if I were at home, I would use even riper than this. You don't really taste the banana so much. Some people tell me I don't like banana smoothies. This is just going to be a nice background to that strawberry. If you wanted to use blueberry, you could. I mean, the combination, as you know, with the smoothies is endless. A really good one that I like that's good for people with diabetes too is actually an avocado smoothie. And I've got one of those online. It's Moroccans do avocado smoothies with fresh avocado, a little bit of ice, and some orange juice, and a little bit of milk, which sounds weird. It sounds like a really weird mixture, but it's absolutely delicious, and I promise that you'll like it. So no one's going to eat these burgers, so don't worry, I'm double dipping, but I would never do that at home. In lieu of a spatula, this is what I'm doing. So now I'm going to add my ice. You want about a cup of ice. In the book, along with this drink, there are also some tisanes. There's a Moroccan mint tea, and there's a ginger turmeric smoother. These are really, really delicious drinks. They're soothing drinks, and they're things that people should incorporate in their lifestyle, not as just alternatives to other drinks, but really as kind of medicinal tisanes. And by drinking some of these tisanes every day, you'll be amazed at how much of a health benefit they have on people. Cinnamon is really good for leveling out the glucose. So if you're drinking a tea made out of cinnamon and ginger, which is also anti-inflammatory, the benefits are going to be great. 1 or 2 of those. You can mix it with warm milk in the morning and have like a chai. And then I have this Moroccan mint tea in there too, which is really fun. We found that with the green tea, which is what Moroccan tea is usually made with, green tea has something which is not only antioxidant, but actually prevents the fat from sticking to the cells in the body. So very, very important for anybody who's on any kind of diet at all. Just mix these up. And this is my first time using the blender, so please bear with me. So that's it. So this is our Strawberry Beauty smoothie. You can make these in large quantities, keep them in the fridge, and just kind of pour them out when you need them for breakfast or a snack. They're great for people who are working out. And we can just check our burgers now. So they're ready. And for these burgers, last year we served them in Boston. We served them on grilled portobellos. Grilled portobellos make a great bun. They also give you a meaty kind of a very full feel, and they, make it so that you don't have to have a hamburger bun, which isn't very figure friendly. And you could also do it between grilled eggplant slices, anything you want. I'm doing it today in between lettuce wraps because I like that idea, kind of like the Chinese lettuce wraps that have the little ground meat in them, to do the burgers this way. I think it's really fun. And I'd probably serve this with a little bit more of the mustard on top, just because it complements the flavor. It doesn't have a lot of fat in it. And then I would serve it with this spinach salad that also has some berries in it. And so that's our pizza and our burgers and our smoothie. And I'd like to remind everybody, some of our recipes from last year were really great and a little bit more exotic than what we're doing today. Last year's recipe book is available from the Hormone Foundation website. It's www.hormone.org. We had some Moroccan tagines, we had Ethiopian collard greens, we had stews, we have Italian soups, all kinds of different things. It's all available for free. It's a PDF download on hormone.org. Click on the resources for healthcare professionals, and then click on Cooking for Pleasure with Health, and you'll be able to see last year's PowerPoints, different issues we talked about, and also get additional recipes to the ones that you have right here. But I would love to answer any questions or entertain your comments. If you have any, there's a microphone right here. You can get up and ask.
Hi, I have a question for sugar substitutes.
Sure.
So do you usually recommend using honey rather than sugar, or what are your thoughts on other sources like artificial sweeteners?
Sure. There are different philosophies regarding artificial sweeteners and sugars, how they affect the body and what they do. Honey is obviously better than sugar to the body because it's natural. However, for someone with diabetes, honey is not a whole lot different than sugar in the way that the body internalizes it in the glucose. So it depends on what level you're at. If you have to make that decision, I would go with honey. And honey's got other good qualities for the body too. But in terms of the other substitutes that are out there, stevia there are many different kinds of things under the name of stevia that go under that umbrella, but there's the In the Raw product. The stevia actually itself is very low in calories, and the derivative, the pure derivative, comes from a plant that's in the chrysanthemum family. So it's not too weird. It's not just made in a lab. It's something natural and that our body can digest. But you have to be careful which one you're buying, because there are many different kinds of that. And that's the one that I would probably use in place of sugar if I want to do a sugar one. But I try to use minimal amounts of sugar, even in the baking recipes. And in my diabetes cookbook, I have quite a few dessert recipes and baking recipes, but we're doing them pretty much by grilling fruit, by roasting fruit, and making natural sweetness this way. And I also recommend agave nectar. Agave nectar is great because you can add sweetness to a recipe without causing a spike in glucose, and it's also natural. So, and you can use less of it than you do sugar. So if a recipe calls for a cup of sugar, then you could use about 2/3 of a cup of agave nectar. In baking, I also recommend using the really overripe bananas for sweetness, again, because you get more fruit, you get a little bit of fiber in there, and not having anything that's foreign to the body. So you have to adapt sometimes a little bit of the baking recipes and really get creative with them. But there's a ton out there. There's a ton available online, and it's good to do. I think that the biggest thing we want to get across today is not to just swap out recipes that are already popular with other versions, but also to create recipes that everybody will love, that are just welcoming and easily available for people with diabetes. It's a good question. Thank you.
It's great that you pointed out a source of tomatoes in a boxed container instead of the canned ones, because we're very worried about endocrine disruptor chemicals.
Sure.
The plastics that line the cans,
Sure.
tin cans, and especially for tomatoes, they're very acidic. And
Yes.
they leach those things out, and that's not good for anybody.
Right.
So it's great that you told us about a source of tomatoes that don't have that problem.
Sure. Thank you for bringing that up. That is a very important point about the toxins. And, people, as you all know, when they're in a disease state, it makes them more difficult to detoxify. So they have to be perhaps extra sensitive than even the general public would be. And I personally have had an issue with toxins in metals and things like that in my body. So I've gone through a lot of detox processes. And eating a lot of greens is a really good way to do that. Juicing in the morning with the parsley and the cilantro is another good way to do that. And eating a lot of alkalizing foods. And they're all mentioned in the book in the very early chapters. Because the more of those foods we eat and the more our pH is leaning more towards alkaline, the better our body can detoxify on its own. Other questions? I'm free for the rest of the day, so, even if you just want to chat.
Yeah, what would you tell a patient who eats cookies that are sugar-free and fat-free?
I'm sorry, ma'am?
What would you tell a patient who eats cookies that are sugar-free and fat-free and they think they're getting no calories?
Sure. That's a very good question. What would you tell patients who are eating sugar-free and fat-free cookies? I would tell them what my doctor told me, and that is our brain doesn't know the difference between artificial sweeteners and real sweeteners. So if you're eating something sweet, you're still going to crave more sweet things. And so that could potentially be a problem for people with diabetes. Also, just as a general rule, I tell everybody, anything that has so many chemicals in it or is so, quote, taking out is going to have a chemical replacement, and that's not good for the body either. It's better to look for a whole food that you can eat less of and get satisfied fuller. And there's a lot of good options out there about healthful baking that they can do, a lot of good resources online. I mentioned the one about our hormone and some of the things that we've got on the hormone.org website. There's also a lot of other good things. I have a bunch of cooking videos up on a channel that I have. It's for monkeysee.com. It's like monkey see, monkey do. And there's a tab called channels. You can click on that and you'll see my name. And I have tons of cooking videos. Most of them are healthy. Sometimes they're not. I might have another sponsor that wants me to do like a chocolate peanut butter egg. But pretty much they're healthy recipes. And you can look at them and identify healthful baking. I've also developed series for different corporate clients, supermarket chains, national supermarket chains, where they'll do things like your wellness programs. I did one with Harris Teeter Supermarket. They had this program, and we did very healthful recipes that were all approved by doctors for a lot of times people with diabetes. So the recipes are out there, and I would tell them, just to avoid those things and replace them with dried fruit and nuts and other kinds of snacks like the things that are listed in here, and just to abandon those products completely. The marketing industry is very much to blame, unfortunately, for a lot of the things that we were talking about today. and why there's a stigma with diabetes. We've been brainwashed since I was a little kid. I remember seeing those different magazines, and they would have, big cakes with lots of icing on them, and then it would say, and then it would have next to it, buy this meter for your diabetes, but eat this cake. And, this cake is sugar-free. How could the cake be sugar? It didn't even make sense to me as a kid, but we're so brainwashed that that's an easy substitute, that that's just what people do, and that's where the products are. But if the products were more based in a more holistic manner, like the other diet products are, then people would be able to make better decisions for themselves.
Hi. I'm intrigued by your statement of have the go-to foods in the freezer. Because everyone has a pantry that is pretty much go-to. But
sure,
my freezer has big packages of frozen whatever. So when I'm hungry in the evening and the kids want to eat, that's not a go-to freezer. It's not fair. And I'm tired at the end of the day. So what kind of things do you have in your freezer, one? And number two, just as an aside, if you go to Whole Foods Market or, I don't know, you have Whole Foods out here, I saw it. Yeah, and then you go to their butcher, they have all of these already marinated chicken breasts that cost a fortune, $8 for a chicken breast, something like that. I know those are the type of things that I should do, and I don't buy them because I can do it. And then I wind up at McDonald's because I'm all confused.
Sure. Well, I appreciate you saying that because I think you echo a lot of people's sentiment, and especially the patient's sentiment by doing that. I mean, endocrinologists are so busy, all doctors are busy, and we're all busy. So that becomes a common thing. What helps me personally is that I have the background of a chef and I have the background of someone who's doing this. So I have learned to think ahead for business reasons, and then I was able to also apply it into my life. So it's kind of twofold. And what has to take place is a lot of planning. And I tell people, just as Dr. Greenlee was talking about, people don't know often how to test themselves for sugar, and that takes a long time. This is a lifelong process. If you have something that's going to be with you for life, the good news is you have your whole life to kind of learn how to deal with it better and make these changes. It doesn't have to be overnight. So building a pantry is important. So as you mentioned, people have that. You have it, but a lot of people don't have it. So I'll talk a little bit about that. Building a pantry, spices like this that are going to give flavor to your food, really quality whole grains that are dried, like quinoa, like whole wheat pasta, like things like this. The tomatoes that are ready to go, the sauce the salt and the pepper, the salt with the refined, natural type of salt, non-refined. Those are the kind of things you want to have in your pantry. In your freezer, you want to have the vegetables, the proteins, the things that can complement those. So what I tell people is when you go shopping, you're not ready for the week. You have to go shopping and have kind of like another little session at home to get you set up for the week. And what you would do is if you've got those big things of frozen, that's okay because they cost less and you're getting more for your money. Then take them home and then put them into smaller gallon size or even the little smaller sandwich ones if you're just one person at home. And get those all sectioned off and ready to go and label them by writing on them with a marker. You can do that with berries, you can do that with greens, you can do that with your proteins. If you're wanting to make the chicken burgers and you've got like that big 10-pound thing of chicken, well then you want to divide it up into little 1-pound sections and freeze it. Then what you have to do is you have to really create a meal plan for a week. And everybody has their own schedule. Some people are off on weekends, some people are off on Mondays, some people are never off, but they've got little pockets of time that are more on other days than others. Whenever you have those pockets of time, think about the meal plan for the week. Include breakfast and include snacks, because those are the easy areas to cheat on because people usually don't have time, they're running out the door. And you want to make yourself little baggies of snacks, baggies of crudité, say chopped up carrot sticks, chopped up celery sticks, some sugar, snap peas in little bags and ready to go. If you've got some hummus that you want to use for the week because it's a good fiber and a good protein, then you'd ration that off too, get it all in the fridge. Any kind of fresh vegetables that you can prep. If you go into a professional kitchen, all of the vegetables are prepped, or you've even seen it in delis or in sandwich bars where the people turn around and they've got this bar with all the little bins of everything ready to go. You could do that for yourself in your kitchen when you come home from the grocery store, and you can even buy them that way if you can. It's a little more expensive, but you could. It's really a big time saver, and it's going to make sure that you use that up during the week and that you're using more of those things. So I recommend doing that, creating a game plan of thinking about the type of food you want to eat. maybe you're used to doing the pizza one night. Okay, so we talked about the pizza. Maybe you have burgers one night, so we did that. Maybe you like kind of an Asian thing one night, and you have some soy sauce, and you have, I would recommend a low-sodium tamari, actually, and you've got some sesame oil in your fridge. You've got some good brown rice in your pantry. Then you can just open up your freezer, quickly defrost in the microwave a green or 2 or 3, some vegetables, saute that in the pan with your garlic and your sesame oil, add a little bit of tamari. It's a great topping for brown rice. You've got your leftover protein from the day before that can get scattered in. So you want to have kind of an arsenal of those recipes. And that's why I recommended downloading last year's PDF, because there's so many things. Even if you don't make my recipes, you'll still have some ideas of what you can do with things at home. Yesterday, I also talked a lot about when you cook, go ahead and cook a big amount. If you're going to make salmon for one night, cook the whole side of salmon, freeze some of it for later, and make the next day. You can wrap it in like a brown rice tortilla and bring it to work with some either leftover rice or some vegetables for a sandwich. You can stir that into a whole wheat pasta. You can do so many things with that leftover salmon. It's a shame just to cook for one night. People are so busy nowadays that you should be cooking for 2 nights and 3 nights and just kind of getting all of that work out and keeping yourself to this plan. Being able to really pull through a week's worth of things that you can have. If you've got the big packs and you break them down into small packs, in the morning before you go to work, always take out and think, okay, what can I cook tonight? Throw that in the fridge, and it's ready to go. One of the stigmas that's associated with people with having diabetes that we talked about is not wanting to talk about it. They also don't want to talk about food. And I learned this a lot from my mom. The minute you open up your mouth and say you've got diabetes, people say, oh, you just have to do this, or oh, you should just doing that, or why can't you get your act together? So everybody really stays very quiet about it because they don't want to have that. So people don't want to talk about food, because if they do, people will say, oh, you're always talking about food. I can get away with it because I'm a chef, but any other normal person can't get away with it because it's not their livelihood. But we should all be thinking about food all the time. In places that have the largest number of people that live over 100, they're thinking about food all the time. And people that, the Mediterranean, where the doctors go and research why they live so long or why they're heart healthy, they're always around food. And the more we're around food, the better. Because there's like a stress response in our body that's very pleased to be around food, because it signals our stomach and lets our organs know that we're going to get fed and that we're not in danger. But when we work in front of our computers, and I'm guilty of it as well, writing books, and people are seeing patients, you're in the office, the body's actually stressed and it thinks we're not going to be fed. So it gets hungrier and it gets a little bit more worried. But when you cook, even if it's a 5-minute, 10-minute skillet thing, the senses are coming, we get that sense of smell, and our brain's like, oh, we're going to get fed soon. We digest our food better, and we actually eat less. So everyone wants to have food part of especially if it's good food, part of their constant dialogue. At dinner, you should know for the next morning what we're going to have for breakfast, what we're going to bring for snacks, and be working on the game plan. And the whole family can get involved. You can give it to them, delegate it to the kids. It's a fun activity for them, and it just keeps the family on track. It's a very good portion. And actually last year, if you go to hormone.org, I had panel discussions where I went into meal planning, and I did a PowerPoint. And there's actually those resources on that you can go through and watch on how to plan meals, how to grocery shop, what to do when you get home from grocery. So it's all like the guesswork is taken out for everybody. I even go into how to schedule meal planning into your lifestyle. Any other questions? Comments? Yes. Sure. I'm sorry? Oh, that's a good question. She asked about the refined salt. A lot of the refined salts do not have iodine in them, but it's pretty much okay because a lot of us get enough iodine from other sources. And if it was a significant problem with the loss, people could always do a supplement or something like that, or you didn't have to use this salt. They have actually iodine-enriched ones if people want that too. Good question. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I just can't hear you. I'm sorry. If you could speak into the microphone, that would be great.
What did you say you like to put in the smoothie?
Oh, the smoothie? This one or other ones? This one we did strawberries, yogurt, and ice, and a banana. You could use any other kind of berry. You could use blueberries, blackberries, raspberries, whatever you wanted. But a fun one that I also have a video for that I think is just different and unique and that is really good for people with diabetes is an avocado smoothie. And that's because avocados have really healthy oils that are good, and they found to have them that glucose leveling effect, and they taste great. It's a Moroccan smoothie, which they do with avocado, a little bit of milk, a little bit of fresh orange juice, and ice. It tastes great, and it helps to get a little more vegetables.
Did you say endoline or endome? You mentioned that word, endoline?
I'm sorry, I think there's a problem with this microphone because I can barely hear.
Endoline or endome? What? I thought you mentioned the product, another product. Did you say endome?
I can't hear you.
Endome?
Oh, edamame.
Did you mention that?
No, I'm not really. I have an edamame salad that I make sometimes, but it's not something that I use across the board or would necessarily think is really good for people with diabetes. It's a good ingredient, but not something that I think would be in that list of really good ingredients.
Oh yeah, you talked about what she's trying to say is something people use on their face, a facial mask.
Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. Now you understand. In the yogurt contains inulin. And inulin's great because it has also the glucose in helping our blood sugar to remain even. So that's the ingredient that they found in yogurt that makes it more healthful. Inulin, and it's spelled just like insulin without the S. So that's one of the reasons they're touting yogurt. Of course, it has all the probiotics, which are really good for us. It's got protein, and I love it because it's easy and convenient. I think whenever you find an ingredient that speaks to whoever you're trying to heal, and it happens to be readily available, it's really lucky for us. I'd like to mention a little bit about Greek yogurt because that's very, very popular. It can't get any more popular, I don't think, in this country. But for a serving, there's about between 20 to 30 grams of protein in Greek yogurt. So Greek yogurt is something to look out for if people want to enhance their protein intake, or maybe they're vegetarians that can eat dairy. Greek yogurt's a really, really good thing. Any other questions? Okay, well, I thank and I appreciate all of you for coming. I think this was a really fun panel today. And my email, if you ever have any questions, is amy@amyriolo.com. So you're welcome to send any questions forward or any concerns about your patients. Thank you.